nashindwa na mali sina we, ningekuoa malaika. Nashindwa na mali sina we, ningekuoa malaika.
I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Tanzania, assigned to a road building project from, well, training started in late March of '64, and I got home from Tanzania in late April of '66. 3 of us decided, in spite of the Peace Corps policy, that we were going to go buy motorcycles so we could get some work done. And that was why we were there. It wasn't to follow what someone in Washington had who had no idea as to what reality was in Africa, wasn't going to tell us how to do things. So we decided to do that. So we kind of paid the consequence, and so did the Peace Corps pay the consequence eventually.
Well, how's that?
Well, new Peace Corps doctor showed up at our house in Tanga one day and noticed 3 motorcycles in the backyard. And of course, the first thing he did when he got back to Dar es Salaam was report that there were Peace Corps volunteers who had their own motor vehicles. They were motorcycles. So we got called on the carpet, and what they decided to do was we had to take the motorcycles and turn them into the assistant, even though they were ours, the assistant director out in Moshi, who would lock them up in a shed. And we were fined 6 months take-home pay. The 3 of us were sitting around one night, right after that, for the first night back, and Joel and Fritz got so pissed off, they said, "I'm going home. The hell with this." And so the next day, or the day after that, Joel and Fritz went to Dar es Salaam. Chamberlain was off on safari having a good time somewhere. They demanded tickets back home, and whoever was in charge at the time, who wasn't, in fact, sympathetic to what we had done, said, "Oh, can I talk you guys out of it?" "No, we're out of here." So they were on a plane back to the U.S. before Chamberlain even knew about it.
Joel Chapman. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Tanganyika 4. I didn't stay for the full tour because I got well, it wasn't really an argument, but we had on our own, at our own expense, gone out and purchased motorcycles because we were doing these road building projects, and we had to be up and down the roads, and we were working at multiple places at once, and we had PWT, the Public Works Department, furnished us the Land Rover and a lorry, or we had some vehicles, but with 5 of us in the group, we didn't all need to be in the same place at the same time, and there was a lot of advance work that needed to be done, getting ready to move into the next area and the laying out of things, and like I was talking about earlier, distributing the steel beams and making sure that they got delivered to the right places and so forth. So we ended up, at our own expense, buying motorcycles, which we used. I think 3 of us bought motorcycles.
Just out of curiosity, do you remember whose idea it was, from your memory?
Probably mine, because I had motorcycles when I was in college, and knew about them, and knew what I could do, and we saw some in Tanga at a like an auto dealer's place. He imported a couple, and there were some there, and we saw them, and then we started looking at them, started thinking about it, and figuring out how we could do it and how much money it was going to cost us, And so we went ahead and purchased these motorcycles, and it was pretty clear it was against Peace Corps policy, and we just didn't say that we had them. And it was kind of a don't ask, don't tell sort of thing, and we just used them. And the guys from the Public Works Department didn't care, and they were just happy that we were getting these culverts and bridges in. And so one day when we were up in Sony, the Peace Corps doctor popped in and was making his rounds on all the volunteers, and I guess we didn't know he was coming. Or we were in, well, whatever. We were in Tanga, and he visited somebody and saw these motorcycles in the backyard and asked somebody, and didn't take long to find out that who owned them, and so they notified us that we were going to be fined for violation of the policy, of Peace Corps policy or whatever, and it was going to be taken out of our separation money or whatever that, I think it was $75 a month that we were supposed to get at when we returned. It sounds like a pittance now, but I have 2 years of that. Well, anyway, that just made me mad, and Fritz Dodge, one of the other fellows that had purchased a motor, he and I started talking about it, and we muttered among ourselves, and we said, well, that's it, we're not going to put up with this, we're going to go to Dar es Salaam. And I can't remember whether we decided, I think we decided before we left we were just going to quit. We just weren't going to put up with it. It was just a real irritation and aggravation, anyway, we went to Dar es Salaam, and whoever was there at the time, the doctor wasn't there at the time, but he didn't care, the director wasn't there, and the doctor wasn't there, and somebody said, oh, well, you just have to take this up with, here's a ticket to Washington, D.C., you'll have to take it up with them there. And we left with, well, we sold the motorcycles and took all of our whatever possessions that we had that we could carry, that we were fully thinking or hoping that we could come back. Well, I realize now it was a naive thing, because we got to Washington, D.C., and it was just all bureaucratic BS, and there wasn't anybody there going to do anything about it, and they just said, sorry, tough luck, you're done. Well, it began to sink in as we were on our way back after we left Dar es Salaam, Fritz and I. We had
on your way back
to Washington, D.C. after we left Dar es Salaam. We resigned in a fit of rage and just said, okay, that's it, we're leaving, and began to sink in that we probably wouldn't be coming back.
Fritz Dodge, and I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Tanganyika.
How did the famous motorcycle incident start? How did that start getting generated, the idea of having a motorcycle?
I think that's when we were in the Usumbaras. There was a lot of work to be done. We were fortunate enough to have a lot of equipment up there. We had a grader, we had trucks, we had Land Rovers, and we had a bridge that required a rock sort of foundation and a poured concrete thing to receive the upper part of a half culvert or a third culvert with, wing walls and all that stuff had been engineered. I think Joel did a lot of the work on that after the survey was done, and so that was there to be done, and numerous other tasks. And the rock, the roads in any mountainous areas are narrow, slow, hard to get through after a rain, and to get supervision or to get a message back and forth, no phones weren't there, cell phones hadn't been invented yet. Sometimes it's pretty necessary to, for somebody to go from site A to site B and communicate with somebody. You couldn't afford to send your lorry all the way back. It would take all day. Somebody on a motorcycle could get there in 10 minutes. I mean, the need for a motorcycle seemed obvious, and to 3 or 4 young men at that age in their life, it wasn't it wasn't a hard sell. Next thing you know, we'd ordered them. And so that's how that started, as a genuine aid in the efficiency of the work.
Now, do you remember, was there much of an attempt to kind of disguise that from the Peace Corps hierarchy that you guys had?
We knew it was a shady deal. We somehow, I think we thought that the explanation that I've just, aiding the work would somehow win approval over policy. But, one never knows. It turns out we were wrong. But,
so you kind of thought, so you weren't particularly worried about the hierarchy. You figured, well, they'd understand or something like that. Is your memory of it?
Well, I think the relative remoteness of where we were, I just don't think it ever dreamed that anybody would, quote, catch us there.
Do you remember any feelings you had, or that when they, quotes, caught you and started giving you a little bit of a hassle? Remember any of that?
Well, I don't think we felt that anybody was going to get sent home, and as it turned out, it didn't. The reason we went home was we became affronted. Now, I think Joel may have had an ulterior motive for being affronted. He had a beautiful young woman, I believe he married and has spent his life with. I had no such need to go back, and it was obviously the wrong decision for me to make, but I did. I was way too naive to know how to react to stuff like that. I remember being disappointed, and yeah. I don't remember why it wasn't obvious to me that I was having a hell of a time and that fighting City Hall was not fun, but we did, and in the larger sense, we ultimately lost.
Nami nifanyeje, kijana mwenzio, nashindwa na mali sina we, ningekuoa malaika. Nashindwa na mali sina we, ningekuoa malaika.